oh, a child's going to come into my home, I'm going to love them. But if a black child shows up to your home and you don't know how to do their hair, are you loving them well? And that's where the complication tends to come in. And it's also where it came in my story, which is that I had parents that, their thought process was like, we're going to love any child well. And of course, by all metrics of like love and taking care of me, they did love me well. But the problem was that they raised me as if I looked exactly like them, as if I would have the same exact experience as them.
Friends, for those of you that are adoptees, like the work that you're doing with your stuff and the hard path that you're forging through these emotional challenges, you're going to be such an asset. You already are an asset to this world, to the community that you're in, to your family. I mean, you're right. When all of us can learn the value of rupture and repair and the how of all of that, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It gives us hope for this world, right?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%.
Oh my
God!
God!
So it's great to see that that's more widely embraced. I mean, I started this space probably 10 years ago, and certainly people talked about trauma-informed parenting, but not even close to the same degree that we do today. And so, it's a real blessing to see some of these things embraced so widely.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk some about race.
Yeah.
Let's talk about transracial. Tell us, from your angle, like what is the correct terminology? Is it interracial family? Is it transracial family?
That's a great question.
And, what's your experience there?
I think transracial adoption is not the incorrect term. I think it's a complicated term because I think now the trans side of it has so many other implications. And so I think it's a complicated word to use, though I think people are still using it. I personally don't love it, but I use it because it is the term. But I would say that it already gives the wrong message of what kind of parenting it is, because we're not, transitioning a child's race.
Right.
And so I will say that the word sends the wrong message about the type of parenting that you should be doing.
That's really insightful.
But interracial, transracial adoption, that is the language that gets used and is whatever I don't know who decides these things, maybe some social work professor or something.
Well, let's just pause right here. You're a wordsmith. I mean, if you could come up with the word, what would it be?
Oh, I think interracial adoption is probably the most correct terminology. Interracial adoption,
gotcha.
because it is it's intermingling of races. It's not a transition of races, and it's not anything else that we might call it. It is interracial. And my friend Tony Hines, who's at CASE, the Center for Adoption Support and Education, that's the terminology that he really goes by as well. And I really have appreciated his arguments for stopping using transracial adoption.
Beautiful.
But for all purposes of not wrong for saying transracial adoption, I want to just clarify that. That is, whoever decides the technical terms, which I don't know who that is the technical term. And if you go to any adoption agency, any foster care agency, that's how they're going to talk about interracial adoption. And so don't want to make anybody feel wrong for using it or outdated. But I think interracial makes more sense. What's the second part of the question? I got lost.
So tell us what you're comfortable sharing about your experience with interracial adoption.
Of course, yeah. So I was interracially adopted, so I have my own experience growing up in an interracial home. And I think that interracial adoption has a lot of complexities. And I think that where they start at is that when people go to adopt, their mindset is often that I want to become a parent. And so the thought process is not around possible complexities with race, but their thought is that I want to be a parent. And usually the mindset is that I could love any child. And usually if they're going to put thought anywhere, they're going to put thought into the medical side of it. Can I take care of special needs and all these kinds of things? But typically when it comes to the idea of the race of a child, majority of people, at least historically, have put open to any race when they're filling out adoption paperwork, because um, I could love any child, which is, I think, at its core, um, a good thing, right? The idea is that I could love a child who looks however. The 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 misconception, or the where that starts to get complicated, is that people of different races do tend to have different experiences. And so the seed of the parent is that I'm going to love any child regardless. But most of the time, prospective adoptive parents do not even understand what it would mean to love a child of a different race well. And so what they're thinking is, oh, a child's going to come into my home, I'm going to love them. But if a black child shows up into your home and you don't know how to do their hair, are you loving them well? If you don't know how to prepare
Right.
them for a world that's going to have comments for them, are you loving them well? And that's where the complication tends to come in. And it's also where it came in my story, which is that I had parents that, their thought process was like, we're going to love any child well. And, and of course, by all metrics of like love and taking care of me, they did love me well. But the problem was that they raised me as if I looked exactly like them, as if I would have the same exact experience as them. And so I didn't grow up with many people that looked like me. I did not, the only other friends I had that looked like me were also adopted. And so as I got further into life, so as I got into my teenage years and I was having more and more experiences alone, racial things happened. I started being affected by people's biases. And then when I got to college, I experienced like actual racism. And all these things were like culture shocks for me, jarring, almost devastating to this world that I thought I lived in. And so what happened was I had parents who loved me well, protected me well, and almost kind of like hid that this could happen to me. And then I went out into adulthood, and I kind of got trampled over, which is not the experience that I think that we want to set children up for. It also doesn't set them up, I think, for an honest exploration of what their racial identity might mean. And so, I talked about how I only knew two, a couple other black people, and they were also adopted. Well, none of us really had a concept for any cultural identity either. So going on into adulthood, not only was I being affected by people's biases and judgment, but then I was also having experiences where I didn't understand cultural things that other Black people I met understood. Even things about my own hair and about my own skin, which are like very complicated, right? Like as you can imagine, like somebody asking you like what products you put in your hair, and you like literally you don't do anything, is a complicated situation when you have hair that evidently needs some kind of product. And so these, I think, are the complications that a lot of historically transracial adoptees have walked into the world with. No understanding of cultural identity because they don't understand the culture of their race. Confusion about bias and racism because they often grow up in safe communities where everybody knows they're adopted. You know what I mean? And for me, walking into pretty much almost anywhere I went as a kid, the fact that I was black meant that I was adopted. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't go anywhere really that by me being there, the assumption wasn't that I was adopted. There was not going to be a black family there. And so there was almost this sense that I got treated, and I think it's true that I got treated very often as if I was just an Etter, right? As if I was just a white person. And the fact that I was black was almost brought up as more of like a joke. You know what I mean? It's like I should be good at black basketball, or I should be able to jump high, and all these kinds of things. There was not an actual like cultural connection. Nobody really thought that I was like culturally. And this became really true when I started sharing about race because I had an experience after my freshman year of college where I went and worked at inner city camp. So it was a camp for inner city youth around Georgia. And while I was working there, it was the first time in my life that I was basically surrounded by people who looked like me for the first time. And so, like, half the staff was black. Almost all the kids that came were kids of color. So I had this summer where for the first time I was looking around and I wasn't like a minority. I went to a Bible college in Lancaster that was like not diverse at all. Like, there were 10 black people that probably went there when I went there. So I was it was college wasn't diverse. It was this camp experience was where I was getting this like really crazy experience of like looking around and being like, I guess I'm not the only black person here. And I came back from that experience very changed. So when I went back to college, I came back very different. I was like, oh, like there was almost a sense of cultural pride. I had all these experiences, and I learned a lot. To be honest, I learned a lot about how to take care of myself. To be honest, um, and I remember that when I went back that fall, I shared for the first time something about racism and about race. And one of the main comments that I heard in backlash of that was like, "Why do you care about that? Because your family is white." And I remember that even one of I forget exactly who it was, but I know somebody I grew up with said, "When did you turn black?" And so I think many times there's not only this loss of cultural identity and this kind of confusion about these things, but you're not even associated really with your race. People who I grew up with did not consider me a black person. They considered me like a black white person. And so they did not consider that I would be affected by things that other black people were affected by because of how I grew up. And so these are all, I think, and it might have been kind of like just like a little bit of like a word puddle there, but I think that these are an assortment of challenges that transracial adoptees face. And the way that transracial adoptees are parented, I think, can undo a lot of what we've seen historically transracial adoptees go through, what I went through, and a lot of my work, especially for the first 6 years of it, was centered around reshaping how parents who are transracial parenting.
Wow. Okay. That story, thank you so much for sharing vulnerably with all of that because, I mean, it may be just kind of like a normal part of your work nowadays, but I know that has impact on our listeners and on this world. And it's all stuff that we all need to hear, no matter whether we're a person of color or not. So thank you for sharing that. And I would love to hear, what are some for say adoptive parents are listening to this and they are about to adopt someone, a person of color, or maybe they already have kids in their home, they already have an interracial family. Like, what are the top three things that you would say that we can do as adoptive parents in these spaces?
Yeah. I think, kind of number one is that you want to build, I think, a home environment that sets your kid up for success when it comes to their racial and cultural identity. And what this doesn't mean is making their whole life about their race, because I think sometimes we fall into these kind of like extreme categories where, like, you think that means that like you have to move to like the hood or like Chinatown or whatever, and you have to like go to this big extreme. What this means, I think, for most transracial is that you need to take the things that you already do. So, like you mentioned, like church is one of them. And churches, I think, is a great example. You need to take this thing that you're already a part of and find the more diverse version of it. So you go to church, and church is an important part of you. That's obviously something you go every week or multiple times a week. What you do is you think to yourself, yeah, my kid who's black, Asian, Hispanic probably should not grow up being the only black Hispanic person in the room. And for their cultural identity, for their racial identity, for their sense of self, it's actually very important that they aren't the only person of that race in the room. It's also very important to see adult figures that look like them in different positions and in different arenas. And so you take this thing that you're already doing and you say, hey, I bet you there's a more diverse community. You can do this with extracurriculars, schools you send your kids to, all these kinds of things. And so what you want to do is you want to create an environment for your child where they are interacting and doing the things that you guys do as a family, but they're seeing people that look like them. They're interacting with people that look like them, and so are you. I think that on underneath or on top, I don't know, whichever way you want to go, of some of these things is that many times the people who are adopting kids of a different race don't even really have relationships with people that look like them. So you're open to any race. You probably are fine with any race. You probably don't see a black person and run away, right? But you don't have any actual relationships with people who look exactly like your child. So when you're kind of building this home and this environment where a transracial adoptee could thrive, another benefit is that like you have relationships with people that look like them because that gives you an insight into what their adult experience might be like, the things that they might navigate. It gives you a trusted partner. And I think that, if there was one thing that would probably be the best thing for transracial adoptive parents to do is to do this, is to do a integration of your community with people that it will do most of the other things. Like, should you talk about race with your child? Absolutely. But it will come up much more naturally if you're in a community that's diverse. If you're in a community where, um, racial instances are not dismissed, then it's going to come up more naturally. And so when, you hear your friend who has to cut their hair because they're going on a job interview or they're interviewing at a certain company, you then get to have an insight. Like, why would you have to cut your braids for this interview? Well, hey, like I know that if I go to this interview with braids, they're going to throw away my resume. And then now you are getting an insight into, oh, well, that's going to be my son one day. My son one day might have braids, and then is he going to think that he has to cut his hair or change his hair to be able to be accepted by a job? And then it's your life, right? So it's not
Right.
huge dramatic things that I think a lot of people think of when they think about it. Um, but I think like if there's number one, like we don't even have to give people four things. If there's one thing you can do that's going to dramatically change your experience as a transracial parent and your child's experience as a transracial adoptee, it's just to be in a community with people that look like your child. Embrace that community, make it your community. I tell this joke because I do this training called Understanding and Supporting Transracial Adoptees, and there's a section I do about racial mirrors and why it's so important to do this. And I think that for transracial parents, sometimes the idea is that like, let me find like something for them to go to, right? So like I'll find a black karate class or a black soccer team, and they can go to that. But that's actually the wrong mentality to think about. You're
Okay.
not you're not sending your kid off to get their black hours or their Asian hours or their Hispanic hours, right? That's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is actually make who they are a normal part of their life. For me, being black was always abnormal. It was always weird.
Hmm.
And so, you know what I mean? And nobody was saying that. Nobody said that to me. But I could look around the
Yeah.
church every Sunday and see that it was just me and my two other friends here that were black. There was no black preacher. There was no black adults. There was nobody who did anything. We did not see black people in authority roles, in professional. We didn't see them as fathers. And so, like, we didn't see these examples of people who looked exactly like us. So it was always kind of weird. I always wondered what I was going to look like as an adult. I always wondered what that was going to be like. And I remember how notable it was every time I saw people who looked like me in different positions in my early adult years, or what it was like when I went to Atlanta for the first time and everybody there was black. You know what I mean? I went to a restaurant and I remember I've joked about it now with people who like friends of mine that are black because I live in an area that's definitely like diverse, but it's definitely not like super super diverse. And we'll joke about how crazy it is to go to Atlanta and like go to a restaurant and like everybody there's black. But like that for me was like literally like an insane experience the first time I had it because I couldn't even really fathom what that would be like. And that's really not what we want for our kids because in essence, like they don't really know where they fit into the world in this concept then. Because I didn't at all, right? I didn't see black people as teachers, leaders, pastors, whatever. And so I didn't really understand how I was going to fit into some of these mixes. And so it gives our kids a lot of, I think, confidence, understanding, and sense of identity by being in communities with people who look like them. And I think that if you did that, if you made it a part of your life and you made friendships in those communities, that talking about race would be something that came up more naturally. I think your kid would feel more confident and assured of themselves, and that you would have support navigating interracial adoption, and you wouldn't need to follow like every single like I could sit here and give you like the best things to do, but um, many of them you'll accomplish through just being there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Funny story. So we have three different races. represented in our family, and our three girls are from Colombia, and I'll never forget, we were on a mission trip, and many of the folks that were on that trip were white. And somebody stood up in front of the group. I think we were on a bus or something. And they were making some joke because we were in a, inter ethnic space, well, that we were ministering in as, the mission trip. And so there was some comment that one of the group members made, like, come on, white people, get it together, or some comment like that. And my daughter was there, and she stood up and she's like, I am not a gringo. And like the whole bus just cheered, like,
Yeah.
yeah, baby, that's true. And that's awesome about you, And I was so like, I mean, I think she was 12 at the time. So but as an adult, hearing her say that, I was like tearing up a little bit, because I'm like so glad that she was so
Oh,
proud of who she was in that moment, to stand up in front of this group of adults and say, yeah, I'm not exactly like y'all, and so don't put me in there with all of that.
well, that's a huge
I saw
win
that.
because, I think I mean, I hear countless stories of adoptees who don't do that, who are trying
Yeah,
actively, and I think the win there is that not only a safety felt by your daughter to embrace her full identity, but some kind of like pride and confidence in it, to where the fact that she was the only person maybe on that bus or other than the instructors and still felt confidence to do that meant that she had, this part of her was not something that she was ashamed of or felt weird about or felt bad about. There was a
right.
confidence in it, which I find to be like it's extraordinarily good, because that's what we want. We want 12-year-old adoptees to feel confident in who they are and not be
Exactly.
ashamed for who they are as a race, because it goes against what we're trying to do in general, right? There's I think thinking about like color blindness and kind of some of these things that we've tried to do to kind of make race normalized, right? That have, I think, really backfired. But I think at the root of them was what we were trying to do is kind of like we want to make sure that everybody feels accepted for who they are, right? Is the
Right,
goal
right.
of a lot of these things. I think that's what was accomplished in that moment, and it wasn't accomplished through not having her see people who look like her or never mentioning her race or all these things, but she felt safe and confident to shout it out because it's a normal part of her life. It's not a weird part of her life or something that never gets talked about or something that never gets mentioned. It's
Yeah,
something that
yeah.
she can feel confident of. And I love that, and I hope many more transracial adoptees have these experiences where they can shout it out and feel good about it
Yeah.
and feel confident about it and not feel shameful or almost as if they're like pointing out the obvious, like, oh, maybe not me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was just so proud of her in that moment. But yeah, so man, there's so many things that we could talk about and so many directions that we could go. Your depth of knowledge and understanding, not just your personal story, but it's obvious that you've done a lot of work in this zone, and you're just helping so many families and adoptees in the process, and I'm sure people outside of the adoptive and foster kinship world, because racial identity, who we are, all of that is so vital.
yeah.
It's so important. So I'm just hats off, all the respect to the work that you do, and it's just been such a pleasure having you on. And so, just last question for you is, where are you finding beauty in this season?
Oh yeah. Well, I've been intentionally working a lot less, and so that's been a gift. So I've been finding a lot of joy in just finding meaning in small moments. So I've been writing a lot more, reading a lot more, and yeah, I just like personally, I've always had like a very like hustler mentality. So I've been building stuff since I was 19. I've been on this whole grind for a long time, and I'm finding a lot of joy in not working. So, like today, this is one of two things that I'm doing, and we'll see what else the day holds for me. But
That's
a
beautiful.
lot of joy in letting life happen, and not trying to force so much. And
Yeah.
yeah,
There's so much joy and beauty in rest.
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's how we
One more
were
time, thank you.
created, so
Yeah, I mean,
so important.
you might feel this too. It's like when you're working and running stuff and leading, and like your time with your family gets so complicated sometimes. And
Yeah.
it's been a real joy to spend more time with my son and to
Mm.
do things and to not feel like a pressure around it. Like if I do this for 2 hours and I got to stay up 2 hours tonight and do a thing or wake up early and just like it gets to be a moment that's special and something that we do or just a day together. And there's not kind of like this equating, how am I going to make up? So
Right.
that's been a real gift and peace in this season.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, Isaac, thank you so much for being here with us today. And it's just been an honor. And I know that our audience is hugely benefited by what you have to offer today. So thank you. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, we will see you on the trail.